Hello, everyone. Welcome to Pro Camera Reviews. My name is Chris Gambit. I'm the editor-in-chief of the Phoblographer. This is a weekly show where I am joined by the rest of the reviews team here at the Phoblographer, and we talk cameras and issues in the photo world. First up, we have Paul Ip, our reviews editor.
How's it going, folks?
And we also have Brett Day, our gear editor.
Hey, everyone.
We're shooting. We usually shoot with the cameras that are built into our computers, but today we're actually doing something a little different. At least Paul and Brett are. Paul, I think you're on the XT4 still, right?
That is correct.
Yeah, and Brett is shooting with a Logitech camera, and he's got some extra lighting, Litra lighting, right?
Yes, yeah, the Litra Studio.
That's it. Yeah. Paul, you just have the gloriousness of Fujifilm's X-Trend sensor on you, right?
And I've got an LED panel lighting me.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense. I've just got this cheap Amazon light right over there, and then I usually keep like a daylight lamp right there to keep me sane, because apparently that's something that people do, like daylight colored lamps. Anyway, getting into the show. So we're talking about three specific topics today. One is whether or not you need to shoot in manual mode. You know, the old joke goes, there's P for professional mode and A for amateur mode. Obviously, it's program and aperture priority, but we're talking about whether or not people really need to do it. Some people are in the mindset that, oh, I really always have to do it, and we don't necessarily think that way. So we're going to debate this a little bit. I don't even think it's necessarily going to be a debate. It's going to be us relating our own experiences. And then we're talking about how we are sort of in the age of super zooms right now, at least for lenses, for cameras. You know, everyone was working on like standard zooms, like 24 to 70 and 7200 for a while. And now it seems like we're going from like 24 to like infinity right now. So we're going to be talking about that a little bit. And then in addition to that, we're going to be talking a little bit about whether or not the point of mirrorless cameras is still really the point of mirrorless cameras. That is to say, when they were introduced almost a decade ago, it was really about being more compact and lightweight and all that stuff. And quite literally, I'm surrounded by 10 cameras right now. Some of them in for review, some of them that I own personally. And we're going to take a look at that in the long run. My segment, though, on that, I think we should save that for last. So, Paul or Brett, which one of you guys wants to go first?
I'm good for either. What about you, Brett?
Who went first last time? Was it me last time?
I have no idea.
Yeah, it was.
I can go.
Pulls up.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, well, we're going to talk super zooms, folks.
Yeah. So what prompted this? I know that, a couple have been announced recently, but I don't think you have any for review right now, do you?
Not currently, although I do believe we're getting some of them in. Yeah, just lately, I think this kind of started over the last summer. We saw, Sony had introduced a super zoom for APS-C that covered a huge range. I know that, Brett, you had tested that lens.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I kind of did like a first impression on it. And then ever since then, we've kind of seen this trend of companies bringing super zooms back. Now, what is a super zoom? A super zoom is something that covers a wide focal range. So, for example, the most recent one that was announced that I can remember is the Tamron 28-200. So obviously you're covering from wide to telephoto.
I would say arguably like a 10 times range, right? Like an 180 or something
right.
like that.
And then, there's also the possibly, it's not yet been confirmed, but a lot of people have been talking about a 100-400 coming out from Sigma. We don't know whether or not it's true or not, but, and we've also seen other lenses within the past couple of years that covers a huge focal range. And, just going back to Tamron, they had I think, was it 18-400? A couple of years ago. And I know they had something similar for Micro Four Thirds as well. So, yes. That's the thing. Like, a lot of people know me as a prime shooter. A prime lens, obviously, it's a fixed focal length, and the reason is because prime lenses tend to have better optical quality, and you get better bokeh, more light uh, being transferred to the passing through to the sensor. But a zoom lens is certainly more convenient because you can essentially carry one lens and that's it. That it will cover everything from close to far. Particularly handy if you're traveling and you can't bring a lot of equipment with you.
I was going to say that because I feel like these days the super zooms that we've been seeing in the past couple of years are actually higher quality because
Yeah, it's a far cry from what we've gotten like maybe a decade ago. Like you're not going to get as much light transmittance. That's a given. Anytime you have a zoom lens, it will never be as bright as a prime lens. I think the brightest commercially available zoom, not even talking about super zoom, just any zoom lens, it's an f2, and that's from Canon. And
for full frame, yes, but
yeah, for full frame, yes.
Yeah,
you got the Sigma, not super zoom, but in terms of zoom lenses, you got the 18-35 1.8 from Sigma.
Yeah, I was also going to say there's also the 24 to 35 f2 full frame. Yeah.
So in general, that's why a lot of people prefer primes. But if you are going on a trip, and you've got limited room in your bag, this very well could be a solution for you. You've got one lens, one camera, and you're good to go for your entire trip. You don't have to juggle 3, 4, 5 different lenses. It's obviously it's going to weigh you down, and you're also bringing a lot of money around. You're carrying essentially thousands of dollars of equipment with you, depending on what you're shooting with.
So here's a question for you guys really quickly. Would you do any sort of professional shooting with a super zoom these days?
Yes and no. It really depends on what it is I'm shooting. It's all about the subject matter, right? If I'm going to be shooting landscapes, maybe not. But if I'm going to be doing a variety of different subject matter, then maybe. Because when you're talking about super zooms, generally they go 200 and beyond. So at that far of a focal length, you don't really need something to be as quote unquote wide open. You're generally shooting. You're maybe stopping down a little bit anyways. So yeah, depending on what it is I'm shooting, and with how good cameras are now in terms of high ISO performance, yeah, I believe you can. As long as we're talking about the latest crop of super zooms. If it's something from maybe a decade ago, maybe not. What about you? What do you guys think, Chris and Brett?
Brett, you go first. I'm sure you want to talk about chasing tornadoes with them.
Well, not so much chasing tornadoes, but yeah, definitely, I'd use a all-in-one zoom to do professional work, especially like my event photography, where it's just going out and capturing candid moments. I mean, I could slap the 12 to 100 f4 onto my Olympus, and I'm set for the whole evening. I won't have to worry about switching out lenses, don't have to worry about messing around in my bag. One camera, one lens, boom, I can get all the shots I need. It's fantastic. It certainly simplifies the workload for sure.
Yeah. For me, I feel like in some ways that require more complementary equipment. Like, let's say I'm using, let's say just something, I'm going to pull something random out of my head. Let's say a 24 to 200, right? If I'm using that much range, then I also need to know, remember that, okay, let's say I'm shooting an event, then I need a flash, probably. Let's say I'm shooting landscapes, then I will also need, filters and stuff like that. So I feel like with primes, let's say I'm shooting street, I know that, these primes are really all that I'm going to be using, and I don't really need anything else. But with a all-in-one zoom, and if I'm carrying that, it's like camera, lens, a whole bunch of accessories. Whereas otherwise, it's camera, lens, accessories. And I think that's also fascinating because, like, let's say you're shooting an event. Um, I think that it's very easy to do with flash because, like, let's say you're shooting with a flash, you're at ISO 400, and the flash has TTL. All that you really need to do is just constantly just zoom in and out, and the lens will tell the flash what to do. And I think it's pretty great that way because what I've also noticed is that the range of f-stops have changed over the years. Like, they used to be like f3.5 to 7.3, and now they're like f2.8 to 5.6 or 6.2 or something like that. So they're still pretty usable, and you get more light. So I think I would. The only thing that sort of irks me is I know that I'm going to have a whole bunch more post-processing to do because, what you were saying, Paul, about optical quality, like a 35.
Yeah, that's one of the areas that I'm most concerned about. Anytime I'm shooting with zooms in general, and particularly with super zooms, you're gonna have to pay attention to distortions. Because that's the that's one of the negatives I kind of come with zooms. And granted, a lot of the latest zooms, these companies do a very good job of making everything pretty much correct in cameras. But you'll still notice if you compare like a JPEG versus the raw file, you'll see sometimes that you will notice either pin cushion or barrel distortion in your image, and that's going to require some post-production work, and it's especially uh, time-consuming when the same lens exhibits different kinds of distortion at different focal lengths.
Oh,
So you
geez,
can't
that's
just
so annoying.
yeah, that's one of the things that I've personally found has turned me off from using Zoom, just because it while it is kind of a quick fix, I can't just batch process it and say, okay, correct all of the distortion at X amount value, and I'm done. I have to go and look at each image and see what the focal length was, and then correct it accordingly. So it's it makes the post processing time just significantly longer than if I was just shooting with a prime. We've seen this recently with the Tamron 70 or 180. It's you shoot at one end, you get barrel distortion. You go to the other end, and just pin cushions like crazy. And you have to go in and fix them individually, which is time consuming.
I know a bunch of Olympus users that would probably argue with you and be like, no, all my profiles are baked into the camera. And we're probably
Well, if you
looking at
only
one right
shoot
now on
JPEGs, that's
screen.
great. Listen, that's the thing, right? If you're a JPEG shooter, like we talked about last week, then you're good. You're what you got is you can deliver that. But if you want to do any extensive post processing, that's when you run into issues, because you have to analyze each image and see what's correct. And sometimes it's not readily apparent to you if there aren't like straight lines in the image. If you're just looking at a scene, it may not look off to you because that's the only point of reference you have. But if you compare the raw to the processed JPEG out of the camera, that's when you usually will notice there's some noticeable difference.
I
was waiting for Brett actually to chime in as well too.
Yeah, I mean, I've shot quite a few events with my Olympus cameras, and I will say that for the most part, for my events, I do shoot JPEG just because they're totally fine for the content matter. You know, I don't have to go out and shoot raw and edit every image. I'd be there for weeks if I'd done that. But then if you do see one that does need to be fixed in post, and you put up the raw, and it's still saving me time because I'm not having to go through hundreds of raws. I'm going through one or two or three or just a dozen maybe. So yeah, I mean, there's pros and cons to
do you
everything
only pull? Do you only pull the raw files when the JPEG isn't up to snuff?
Yes.
Okay, so by default you should both.
Yes. Yeah. I have one card captures raw, one card captures JPEG. If I go through it and I see something I don't like, I find the corresponding raw file and then I fix in post.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
That's the sign of a great shooter. A guy that'll sit there and just be like, "Yep, I know exactly what I'm talking about." See, that's my thing. Like with Olympus, I really wish that they had an in-camera rating system, like
Mhm.
Oh
starring.
man,
Yeah, that would
yeah,
be nice.
that's like a conversation we have every time we're in the room with them.
Man, I've had that conversation with the Japanese.
Yeah, every time I see them, say, "Hey guys, when are you gonna put this in?" Like, please tell. Every time we sit down and they announce a new product, I'm like, "So, rating system?" It's like, "No, not yet." I'm like, "Why?" We have this conversation every time. Like, why?
Yeah, seriously.
Yeah,
I mean, Fujifilm has it, Canon has it, Nikon
Sony
has
has it,
it,
Nikon has it. Yeah,
Sony has
everybody
it.
has it. It's especially for the pro that has to get a workout. That's so handy because when you know you got that shot, and you just bring it in, you could before you even comb through your entire card, you can just show me the 5 stars, done. And you don't have to like comb through all your different raw files that you shot in that session. It's a huge time saving.
Yeah, absolutely.
It
Yeah.
seriously is. I'm curious now. I'm trying to remember if Leica does it. I'll have to get a Leica and borrow one or something like that. But yeah. Um, Final thoughts on super zooms, though. I mean, like, this is probably an area that I don't think mobile phones will ever really be able to compete. Like all those phone manufacturers are like, oh yeah, we have like a 41 megapixel sensor and it's got DSLR features. And I'm like,
We've seen this recently. That Samsung, what is it, the S20 Pro?
yeah,
Oh, it's got like what 100 times or 120 times zoom. But
Something
everyone
crazy.
that actually tested it, the only thing you get when you zoom all the way in, it's first of all, um, it's all software interpolated zooming. It's not optical zoom. So the result that you get is a hot mess. It looks like you shot the image with a potato. It's not
hey
using.
man, do not insult pinhole shooters. Okay,
I
they
did
work
not say it was
really
a pinhole.
hard.
No, listen, I would if someone made a pinhole potato camera, I would be super impressed. However, you're not going to go out and say, "Oh, it's 120 times zoom," and then you know, great, you have a bullet point on your spec sheet, but it's meaningless because
Yeah,
now you basically open yourself up to ridicule because it's it's a joke. It's not a real feature. You just you're inviting ridicule. That's what that is.
yeah.
If you can put 120 times optical zoom in a phone, then I would be impressed.
I remember years ago when Panasonic used to do this, and they used to call it intelligent resolution and like intelligent zoom, and then suddenly Olympus started. Not Olympus. I'm sorry. Um, Adobe started to do it with intelligent upres. Intelligent upres actually works most of the time, but it's not foolproof. Like I've
No,
seen some
well,
problems with it.
it's all based on algorithms, right? Even now there are programs specifically designed to do upresing. I think Topaz has like gigapixel or something. They're using AI algorithms and seeing what it is you're shooting, and they're trying to use the best approximation of your shooting conditions and the data that you're feeding it to basically fill in the missing pixels. So in a way, it's kind of a misnomer to say you're up-resing it because it's kind of like when you watch a movie and zoom in. Like anyone watching security footage, they'll do some crazy thing. Like, punch in on this image, and all of a sudden you have an image that's like super grainy, and then you pull in and you see like it was shot on like a phase 150 megapixel back because you have all the details in the world. I'm like, it doesn't work that way in real life.
Are you sitting there telling me CSI is a lie?
Oh, it's
Oh
so
my gosh.
okay. I will give
And
that
Batman.
they get a lot right on CSI, but they also get a lot wrong.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's like just punch in. And you can't create data when there wasn't data there to begin with. But that's a completely different conversation.
So funny story really quickly about CSI before we move on to our next one. There are guys that actually do photograph CSI scenes with the little pop-up flash
Mm-hmm.
on their like DSLR. I've seen it. I'm like, Wait, really? And no, they happen to do that. Like,
I think
they're
now
not.
though a lot of them using ring lights.
I rarely see ring lights, like at least around this neighborhood. But yeah.
Yeah, it's just funny though. I mean, that we could do a whole episode just on depictions of photography in the media.
One thing real quick I would say is in Dexter. Yeah, you guys ever seen Dexter?
Oh, I love
Yeah,
that.
of course.
Okay, so like Dexter, he uses Olympus camera with his twin macro flash on the end of it. I thought that was pretty cool, but you know, at least they got that bit right.
There's someone on staff that knows. Like, okay, there's someone that knows photography on staff.
Yeah.
And when they get it right, like it's kind of like we appreciate it because I'm like, oh, someone's paying attention.
Yeah. Sort of like I don't know. There were movies that were really terribly exaggerating. I think it was called like Blowout or Blow Up or something like that. Some guy's shooting with a medium format camera and like he never has to reload the film.
Oh yeah, yeah. I think I know what you're talking about. Like he'll crank the advance lever 1,000 times. I'm like, what back are you using? Like you've shot like 40 frames, but like you're using the same back. What's going on?
Yeah, right. Exactly.
That's hilarious.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, let's move into our next segment. You know, we were talking about super zooms for professionals, and now we're talking a little bit about professional mode, amateur mode, manual mode, and I forgot what the other mode is called. I think it's called I don't know, man. Like
I don't know. We'll call it S for superstar.
yeah, superstar mode.
Because that's the one I use all the time, of course.
Yeah.
There's also, depending on your manufacturer, there's TV mode, there's AV mode.
Oh yeah, Brett. How could you forget about that?
There's B mode.
Right.
Yeah.
There's also the Pentax modes that are like TV AV or something like that.
TV, AV, FV. Yeah, well, that's one of those things too. Different manufacturers use different acronyms.
Yeah.
It makes it so complicated. I wish it was just a standard.
Seriously, it would be great.
Yeah,
but
it'd be fantastic.
But manual mode, I mean, I'm personally not of the opinion that everything needs to be shot in manual mode.
Ooh. This is going to be interesting.
Oh, yes. I hit a nerve.
Let's go.
I hit a nerve. Let's do this.
So, I mean, to me, you know, there's so many times I've had so many people come up to me and be like, hey, do you know that so-and-so doesn't shoot in manual mode? And there's no way they can call themselves a professional photographer if they don't shoot in manual mode. It drives me up the wall to hear that, okay? It really does, because I really don't think there's any need to shoot in manual mode all the time. Now, I will go out and say that it is vitally important for any photographer to learn about manual mode and how to shoot in manual mode. And there needs to be an understanding of ISO and shutter speeds and apertures and how they all come together into the exposure triangle. You've got to have that basic understanding. But I feel personally that when you get to that point where you've mastered it, you don't have to live there all the time. Simply because cameras have become so good now that you can use aperture priority or shutter priority, and you can still get the shots that you want to get, and you still have some creative freedom to do what you want to do without having to spend the time fiddling with dials every single time you want to take a shot. How do you guys feel about that?
I also sometimes shoot in P mode. Like the Sony, Paul will remember this. The Sony RX100 was annoying me so much that I just gave up, and I was like, man, these dials, forget these dials. I'm just going to like shoot it in P mode and just tell it brighter or darker. And still, my finger would hit the little lens ring, and it would still like accidentally tell it, "Oh, brighter or darker." I'm like, "Geez, man, Sony, what are you doing?"
Yeah, my thing with whether or not you need to shoot in M mode is one. It depends on your subject matter. Okay, if you're shooting pro sports, and you're like, "Oh no, I'm manual only." I'm like, if you can nail every shot and you're shooting manual, my hat's off to you because
seriously.
I know I can't. If you're shooting pro sports, or if you're shooting wildlife, or even if you're just shooting, like if you're photographing your kids or your pets, like anytime you're dealing with subjects that move quickly and erratically, I'm human, so I will never have the same reaction time as a machine. And
exactly.
I knowingly give up that control that manual affords me because chances are the algorithm, with particular talk about autofocus algorithms here. The AF algorithms are so good on some of these cameras now that they will allow you to create images that was not possible before, simply because we are not reacting at the speeds that a machine can. It's just pure and simple. That's just the nature of it.
I'm faster than a machine.
Yeah, absolutely. This is exactly what my point was going to be. Now, if we were having this conversation 10 years ago, I would never have said, hey, you're a professional photographer, sports photographer, wildlife photographer, whatever, rely on your camera. I would never, ever would.
Yeah, because you didn't. The cameras that we have now, like the A9, A9 II, or like the 1DX, or like cameras like that top of like the cream of the crop top of cameras that have the best AF performance, right? Or even like the A6600, a $1,000 crop sensor body, a crop sensor camera. Even that was able to perform in such a high level that, a decade ago, people would never think that it would be possible.
Well, even the Sony A6100, when I had that one in for review and I took it down to the motocross track, I stuck it in shutter priority. It nailed every single shot.
That camera I'd still tell people that it's one of the best bangs for the buck right now, of what's available on the market. If you've got $600 to spend and you want a good camera, that's probably the best when you get feature-wise.
Absolutely.
You may not like the ergonomics, but if you're talking about pure features, you're getting so much for your money. But bringing it back to the mode, what mode to shoot in. Another thing I tell people is, yes, obviously knowing manual is very important for you to become a more complete photographer. Just you're making conscious decisions of how you want each element to be dialed in at, because what is going to what that's going to affect the ultimate image that it creates. So as long as your ability to adjust these settings doesn't get in the way of you creating an image that you want, go ahead, shoot manual. I shoot manual almost like exclusively, whenever I'm testing something, until I need to test certain features that does not make sense for me to just shoot in manual. If I'm going to shoot the AF performance, by me telling the camera only to shoot in manual, I'm actually stifling its ability, because it's not performing at its maximum potential.
So, serious question. What do you guys think of the running man mode? Like the sports mode that's automated, and like the macro mode, and
that's
head mode.
Yeah, the flower mode is brilliant.
Yeah.
That's more also like going back to like last summer when we were in Atlanta, right? Shooting motorsports. That's one of those scenarios where, okay, it depends on what image you want. If you want to have every image to be crisp and sharp, then average priority might be great, or shutter priority might be the one you want. But if you want to, let's say, convey some sense of motion, and you don't want everything to be crisp and sharp, you want some blur in the background to convey how quickly the subject is moving, then you may want to, maybe, don't shoot in full auto, obviously, but maybe you want just shutter priority and dial the shutter speed slower than you would traditionally set it at. So let's say for a car, for a race car, instead of shooting at like 800th of a second, maybe you do like 200th of a second or 1/100th of a second. That way, the wheels are blurry, so that the car is in motion, and it doesn't look like the car just parked in the middle of the racetrack.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where knowing how to shoot manual informs your decision when you choose to, quote unquote, give up some control.
Right. And have you guys ever tried shooting like hummingbirds, for instance?
Oh man.
Yeah, they're so difficult.
Insanely hard to capture hummingbirds. So stick the camera in shutter priority. That's the only thing. That's all I have to worry about. Those things dart all over the place. If I'm sitting there trying to figure, he's moved to a different area of lighting, got to change my ISO, or got to change my aperture or my shutter speed, I can just change my shutter speed and I can get the shot.
Right.
Yeah, I'm usually in like aperture priority, and I just crank the ISO up.
Well, I mean, aperture priority is good, and especially like even just shooting outdoors. On a summer's day, if like clouds are coming in and out, and sometimes you'll miss a shot if a cloud just suddenly rolls in and completely changes the exposure. But if you have it in aperture priority, then it will automatically adjust your shutter speed or your sensitivity so that you can still maintain the depth of field that you want, by setting it. Let's say I only want to shoot at 1.8. Okay, so every image will be shot at 1.8, and then the camera will compensate on the fly for your shutter speed or your sensitivity. And that's going to react so much quicker than we can as human beings sometimes. And I think instead of saying that, if you're not shooting manual, you're not professional, we should change the way of thinking. Is if you don't know how to shoot in manual, then you're limiting yourself as a professional. But if you know how to use it, like, go ahead, Chris.
That's where I'm sort of torn, because like there are so many photographers that have come up shooting with iPhones, and they still are professionals, because a professional by definition is someone that makes most of their money via taxable income, most of their money via photography. And I mean, if you're shooting an auto and you still get the shot, like, we don't sit there and look at Eddie Adams's work of the wars, and we're not sitting there and we're like, oh, I wonder if he shot that in manual mode or not. Like, we're sitting there thinking about the shot that he got. Mm-hmm. And years ago, like, I thought my old boss at B&H was trolling me, Steve Schwartz, but he was saying, like, no, all of these guys, when they're shooting sports, like, they actually shoot in auto. And we had this debate amongst ourselves that got, like, pretty loud, and we had to call in, like, some of the guys from the phone sales, and they were like, no, some guys shoot in auto, some guys are shooting in aperture, some are shooting in shutter. Right. And, like...
Yeah, but we have to acknowledge the fact that even though they are shooting in auto, these are people that know how to shoot in manual. Knowing how to shoot in manual informs your decision making, regardless of what mode you're shooting in. If you only know how to shoot in auto, then you're not doing yourself, you're doing yourself a disservice, because in situations where you want more creative control, but you still want to let your camera do the heavy lifting for you, you're not going to be able to know when to turn that on or off.
Yeah, that's a fair point.
I mean, it's definitely circumstantial, and like you say, it's subject matter. But as we define professional photographer as someone who makes most of their taxable income from doing what they do. But right. Going on further from that, a professional is someone who can get the shot, and by that, what I mean is they know how to anticipate how to get the shots, where to be to get the shots, what to look for to get the shots, and if they're getting those shots, whether they're using manual or automatic mode, they're still getting the shot, and they're getting paid for what they're producing. So,
yeah, that's a fair point.
And also another thing too, with that comes part and parcel of being a professional, is that in order for you to sustain at being a professional, you need to be able to deliver results consistently and repeatedly. And that's where knowing what and when to use certain modes is so important.
Do you know how much it would suck if you were a sports photographer at the Super Bowl and you missed a game-winning catch because you were faffing around changing settings on your camera?
Yeah. Yeah, you'd kick yourself.
Right. So, I mean, I'd rather put myself in a position where I know I would be able to capture that shot at that time.
Yeah.
Also, another thing too, that like another thing too is in the event that there's equipment failure, that's when knowing how to shoot in manual will maybe possibly save your bacon, because if for whatever reason the AF just takes a dive, okay, like everything else is still working great, I could still focus, I could still handle the focusing, and hopefully I'll at least have a chance of nailing the shot, whereas if you don't even know how to adjust those settings manually, you are going up a creek with that.
Yeah, absolutely. Your base knowledge has definitely got to be there on how to adjust a camera manually and how to use a camera manually. But if you know that, I don't see that there's any issue in using semi-automatic modes.
Yeah.
That's it's like what you call it, like professional kitchens, a lot of the work can be done by, electric equipment. But why do they require, interns to do all of the mise en place? Because you're training skills that will last a lifetime. If you know how to do it, you may not always need to, but if you ever need to fall back on it, that skill is there. And it's in your tool bag that you could pull out whenever you need,
One of my proudest skills is I can finally chop onions without using a knife. Like, I can just use my bare hands. It's just, I never really thought about
Smash an
it.
onion?
Yeah.
Smash that onion like you smashed that leg button on this video.
No, man, I think about it like the Karate Kid. It's just like the entire time.
You've done some hand sharpening.
Right.
Yeah.
So go ahead, Chris.
No. I was thinking about like film cameras and stuff like that, but I haven't even fully formulated my thoughts. So go right ahead.
I was just going to say, I know we were kind of making fun of the automatic modes a minute ago, the sports mode and the macro mode and everything like that. But I'm a self-taught photographer, and using those modes is how I taught myself about the exposure triangle. By taking pictures in those modes and then going back and looking at what the camera was deciding to use, I was able to formulate what was going on in each of those pictures. So, I mean, they're a good learning tool.
Yeah. In addition to that, too, I also feel like, sometimes just using the more automatic modes is so incredibly fun. Like, there's a reason why I love my Fujifilm Natura S. Like, there aren't any like controls on there for a manual functionality, but like I know it's got like a 24mm f1.9 lens. It's super small. I can use it. Yeah, Paul got his. You can use it for parties, and I like just knowing that I can be there in the moment, take a photo. I don't have to sit there and like fiddle, and it will just get the shot each and every time because it can do it. And all I really have to do is just sit there and like just be in the moment. And there's something very liberating and powerful about that than having to just live partially in my tech mind and partially in my art mind, and then also in my emotional mind. And for this, I just have to live in, my emotional mind.
Yeah, that's why like the camera, like, the Contax T2 and T3 became so popular, because, like all the celebrities, oh, I'm going to shoot film, and, not taking away from, like, because these are all creative people. They, they work in the creative industry. A lot of them work in film and television and stuff. So they speak the visual language already. This is just a tool that allows you to translate that onto an image. So, if you don't care about all the technicalities and you're just trying to document the scene, something like this is great. And, if you can afford it, T3, if you want to drop, $1,500 on one, more power to you.
I'm going to write an article on it next week, and it's going to go up to 3,000. You just wait. Yeah, man. Any final thoughts before we move on to the ideas of mirrorless and whether or not they've stayed stuck to their cores?
And we've covered this pretty well.
Yeah, I mean, other than just saying that, don't be afraid to use these modes. They're there for you to get more out of your camera. And if it's going to help you get the shot in a specific situation, then go ahead and get it done. Use them.
Agreed.
You know what I've also realized, like, as we were talking about this, I was looking at every single one of these cameras that are around me, and they're not really targeted to the intro crowd. So they don't have like the Running Man mode and the flower mode and the head mode and the mountain mode on them. I don't know if you guys have anything. Does yours have it? No. The Fujifilm GFX100 does not have it.
Yeah, well, they purposely, they made it a point to point out that this thing has no automatic modes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Brett, does it's the EM10, right?
EM10 does not. It has, well, the EM10 and the Nikon Z50, sorry, my Brit coming out there, the Z50, both have what they call scene modes, which you can go into scene modes, and then from the touchscreen, you can select whether you want to use macro mode or any of these specialized automatic modes. So, I mean, they are on there.
Okay, yeah, they are on there, but they're not in the quick dial, once again. I think
Right, yeah.
I think in the past decade, like they just created so many modes. They're just like, we're just gonna bundle them all to seed. Like,
Yeah, that's one of the things that I find confusing sometimes. It's like instead of telling you what settings are being like locked, they name it like a scene mode. I'm like, okay, but what settings are being adjusted? Like that ends up being more confusing to me. Maybe just because like I'm old school and I come from like doing my own adjustments. So like, oh, this is like pets mode, or this is a still life mode or something. I'm like, oh, okay.
yeah, I think it's I don't know. Like, I'm also just thinking about like how other manufacturers don't really standardize what those modes are called too. You know, like
Well, I mean, there are a bunch of things that aren't standardized.
Mhm.
If we're
they
gonna
really need to.
if we're gonna standardize things, let's start by having lenses mount and turn the same way for every camera.
Oh my gosh, this
Oh.
Nikon's been killing me.
Having like the zoom rings and manual focusing rings turn the same direction. If we're
Yes.
gonna standardize anything, let's start with that first.
You know, it's so crazy because when I was getting this Nikon ready for this segment, like I remember I was talking with one of our former contributors, Michelle Ray Yu, and I remember like when we were at the launch event for this thing, like she was like, "Hold on, Chris, like I'm ready to go shoot, but wait, hold on. I forgot that this is Nikon and I need to turn the lens the
Oh my
other
God.
way. And I need to turn everything else."
Every time.
Yep.
Every time. I know.
Yes, granted, this is a very unique problem that usually only people like us have to deal with because we're always switching between systems.
Yeah.
Like, why is it not standardized across the whole industry? It
I
just
know.
makes no sense. It's like if you drove a car and like this car, the shifter was on the left side. And then the other car, the shifter's on the right side. And then another car, the shifter's on the roof. Like, what? Like,
And you're constantly your seat is always on the left side.
Yeah, and like you're grabbing for things that aren't there because you just drove something else, and you're sitting in a new car. I'm like, oh crap! Now I'm gonna crash because I don't know where the shifter is.
All right, let's get into this. So, I guess I'll start with Olympus, right? You know, Olympus. Brett, I know you have a smaller Olympus on you, so
Yeah.
I'm gonna ask you to sometimes like hold yours up. So this is the OMD EM1 Mark III, and like this thing has gotten a lot bigger since the original. Brett,
Grab mine. Yeah, you guys talk. I'm gonna grab my Olympus too.
That's
yeah,
actually the same size as compared to earlier on because I have the EM13 as well. It's actually roughly the same size as this Z50.
oh,
The body is.
wow.
Yeah, they're roughly the same size.
Well, there you go. Like,
So Micro Four Thirds has expanded for sure.
yeah, absolutely. And I mean, the lenses, I'm not gonna lie, these are pretty small. This is a 12 to 100. It's an f4 throughout. It's the equivalent of like a 24 to 200. And this is around the same size that their lenses have always been. You know, their lenses have always been very small. What I really like, though, for their system, and I mean, I'm starting with them because they were really the first mirrorless system out there. I feel like they have really stayed true to their core beliefs of everything should be very small. Even if that means like making a slower lens, they're like, no, we're going to put size first.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree. And going on from that, this is their 40 to 150, which is what an 80 to 300 f2.8 equivalent up against the 24 to 70 2.8 on the Nikon. So the smaller lens on the Nikon is the same size as a much bigger telephoto lens on Micro Four Thirds. So this is definitely a plus of the system.
Exactly. And in addition to that, this is my favorite lens on Micro Four Thirds on this camera. And it's still pretty small. You know,
Voigtlander?
Yeah, the Voigtlander. It can be even smaller. Like this is it without the lens hood. And let me see if I can find something else. That makes sense.
Yeah,
My fist.
I've got the M5 III here.
There you go.
It's pretty tiny.
Oh, you know what I can use? This
No,
is hand sanitizer. Go ahead.
EM10 2 right here, which is even
I think
smaller
that's
than
even
the EM5.
smaller than this.
Yeah, it is. It's absolutely tiny. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is a 2-ounce bottle of hand sanitizer, right? And I'm going to put it next to it. Like, it's still pretty small. And that's really awesome. So Micro Four Thirds, I feel in general, like through Panasonic and Olympus, they've really stuck to the original core ideas of everything should be super small. And I think that that is wonderful to the consumer in so many ways, like weight, smallness, like it being really tiny in your camera bag.
To a
While
degree,
you beg pardon.
to a degree, it can be a little too small sometimes.
Maybe your hands are just a little too big.
No, my hands aren't. The thing is, my hands are not that large, but like sometimes, like you know, I can. Two of my fingers are dangling off, like the end of the side of the body. That's how small this camera is.
Hold on, Paul. Adjust your hands. So, like, your finger is not even on the shutter right now. So,
It is.
like, bring it.
No, two of my fingers are dangling off the sides of the grip.
And that's how you would hold it? You wouldn't bring your, like, middle finger up at all?
I can, but it's still I'm saying that like the last part of the finger is just dangling off the side.
Oh, I see. I see what you're saying.
So that's, you know, depending on what lens I have, let's say I've got that same lens that Brett was holding up before, the 40 to 150. With that thing mounted on this camera, it just feels like it's about to topple over in any minute.
Brett, are your fingers hanging off when you hold the EM10?
My pinky.
Okay.
That's just my pinky, and I mean it's not too bad. This is a light camera, so it's not painful or uncomfortable to hold. But I can on the EM1 the same thing happens, and it can get a little uncomfortable.
Yeah, and the thing is, like, they make some great glass, but sometimes on a body this small, it can be a little much, you know, it can be a bit unwieldy.
Yeah, especially if I have my EM1 with the 300 f4 on it. It's
Oof, yeah.
it's a little interesting.
Nope.
Yeah.
You're not. I mean, you can single hand hold it, but it's just. I feel like the lens is going to snap off of the mount.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Especially if you add the teleconverter on there as well.
Well, yeah, at that point, your camera just feels like a lens cap.
Yeah. So let's go into the second system. You know, we have Micro Four Thirds here. The second system that really launched into mirrorless was Sony. And Sony's latest evolution, you know, it's the A7 bodies. And for full frame, like, these are pretty small if you're going with Sony directly. I know that Tamron is also very small. But I realized, like, recently, one of the reasons why I really didn't like the Sony system, at least recently, wasn't because of Sony. Like, Sony has this 55mm f1.8 that is pretty small and delivers great image quality. And then they have this 35mm f2.8, which is also pretty small, delivers great image quality. My favorite of the 35s, they have a 35-1.4 and a 1.8, is probably the 1.8 because it's the best compromise between size and performance and build quality. But when you have the Sigma 35-1.2, Paul is laughing right now. This is redunculous. Like, I mean, like, I understand, okay, there's innovation, but I feel like Sigma, at least in the art lineup, doesn't really understand what mirrorless is supposed to be about.
I mean, if you want to talk about redunculous lens sizes.
What you got?
Yeah, there we go. That's the EOS R with 85.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, like, but see, the thing is, though, the EOS R is a little bit better adapted ergonomically than this thing. Like, this thing is just, you pick it up and you're like I have a wrist strap on my original A7 right now. It's like, you pick it up, it's like, man, I don't want to shoot with this. Like, it's so much. Pardon?
Shoot with the 6000 series.
Why would I put the 35-1.2 on the?
No. I'm just saying, if you want something that, you know, fits into the promise of it's small and light and it performs, the 6000 series, I think it's a sweet spot. It's such a small camera.
Well, you're right about that, but also the A7 series is also pretty great for that. Like, they're still small, they're still very light. They're sticking to the ideals that, like, oh yeah, it really should be smaller. And if you want even smaller, like, put Tamron lenses on.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, like, what do you guys think? I think Sony has been sticking to the ideals of like small and light. Same with Micro Four Thirds, but like they're third-party manufacturers, not
Well,
necessarily.
I think there needs to be, you know, when people are talking about, oh, why are these things so large, like, and whatever, like, mirrorless is supposed to be tiny. Well, you have to look at the bodies and the lenses separately. You know, the bodies, they could miniaturize a lot of the other components, you know, and, you know, if you strip out the pentaprism, then obviously there's a huge amount of space that's no longer needed on a mirrorless camera body. But with lenses, you're still constrained by the laws of physics. You know, if you want like an f1.2 or if you want like a f.95 lens, it's going to be gargantuan. You can't get around, you know, laws of physics. In order to get that much light through the lens, it has to be a particular size. And, you know, that problem gets compounded when you add things like image stabilization into the mix.
Yeah.
All those components have to go somewhere.
Yeah, I mean,
you could miniaturize the stabilization components to a point, but it will still take up some room.
I mean, you're saying that, but then I think about Sony with the 24mm f1.4 G Master, and think about all the innovation they did with that, and how small it is, and how light it is. Like, I think it's possible.
But a lot of 24s aren't that huge. You know, the only times you get a really gargantuan one is probably a ultra wide zoom. Like the 12 to 24 is huge. You know, but it has to be.
No, man. Like Sigma's
the front
2414.
Yeah, the front elements are all bulbous.
Not, I don't think that's the case for Sigma 2414, but for zooms, yes. Canon's 2414. I don't think anyone else makes one.
Yeah, I would say Canon's doing some. They're like on the edge, the cutting edge when it comes to like tiny zooms.
Yes. For tiny zooms, yes. For primes,
like,
you know.
Goodness.
Yeah, but for primes, they're really big.
Oh, yeah, it is. Look at this. I'm going to put the two of them.
But at the same time, they're also very innovative, you know?
Yeah. That like, look like one can fit inside the other. It's like a Russian doll.
Let me tell you one of the problems I'm having right now with this Z50 is this camera feels fantastic in the hand. In terms of size, I love the size that Nikon made this camera. It feels brilliant. But then they've got this lens mount, and that's the size of a double-story house on there, right? Right. Yeah. So you have to attach these honking huge lenses to a tiny APS-C camera, and it throws the whole thing off. I hate this. And it's like, and I was thinking, you know, even when they come out and make their APS-C dedicated lenses are still going to be huge because the lens mount is huge as well.
Right. Yeah, I think that's where they kind of shot themselves in the foot. You know, their whole marketing thing was, oh, look at our huge new mount. Like, look at how big the opening is. So, like, we can minimize our flange distance. Okay, but the same benefit you're touting with with the larger bodies, it's going to cause some issues when you start trying to minimize the size of, everything else.
I mean, if you really want to talk about big, there's Panasonic and Leica and the L-mount Alliance. I mean, this is the Sigma.
Well, that's just ridiculous. The FP is so small.
Yeah.
Especially if you take the grip off.
That's what I'm going to do right now. So, like, this is it with the grip, right? And I'm going to take the grip off.
Yeah, it's like you got two GoPros hot glued together. That's the size of the FP.
That's basically it. Yeah, like, okay, so this is it, right? And now the grip, I believe in you. Come on, you can do it. There you go.
Yeah.
And now you got this big, huge lens on the small body. Or I could take, this giant body, which makes no sense. I know. This is the size of like a 5D Mark II.
Yeah.
And I can put a small lens on it. So let me...
honestly, that feels clunkier than the 5D Mark II, to be honest.
Absolutely. I mean, the 5D Mark II has like this nice elegance to it. Yeah. And that was my last favorite 5D series camera.
Yeah, the Panasonic S1 series, it's one of the, after a while, that was the first time where like my arms kind of got tired, like just shooting it for a day.
I mean, look at this thing.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Jeez, it actually does hurt. Yes, but Sigma with their 45 contemporary, but the ergonomics like are still not there. You know, like
That's also that's designed to go into a cage for like a cinema rig.
we don't know that. Once again, in my meeting, they did not say that. They were like, "Oh
There have
yeah,
been
there are landscape photographers and
There
there
have
are."
been multiple meetings, and you know, even the own messaging on that camera is not clear.
I know. Even when I like, you guys were on that email with the rep last
Yeah.
week. They were like, yeah, we don't even know what we're doing with this camera." I'm like, okay, come on, guys.
We just built it because we wanted the world's smallest full frame camera.
But that's Sigma. It's not the first time they've released a camera that nobody asked for. You know,
That's so true. That's so true.
I mean, they have a history of releasing cameras. Like, and then people scratch their head and like, wait, Sigma made a camera?
Like, why?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, the Foveon sensor is awesome, awesome tech, but everything else not so much.
Yeah. So Nikon, right? I'm going back to Nikon. So first off, I don't understand why when they engineered the Z system, why they didn't turn it so that, okay, if I want to take this lens off, the traditional thing is I do that. But now...
But Nikon's always done it that way.
And not only that, but like I have to press the button on the left. Like it's not here.
Yeah.
Okay, they've always done it that way, but things change.
You change your mount.
Yeah, exactly. So that was my thing. So them overall, like I still feel like they're going for big in terms of some lenses, even though it's 24 to 72/8. It's very innovative and it's fairly small. But like, oh geez, I have to remember to turn it the other way. This is their 35-1/8. And I'm going to put that on the Nikon. Again, remembering to turn the other way. Oh, jeez. And, like, that's more manageable. I feel like that's more reasonable. It's smaller.
Yeah.
Like,
try shooting that camera with the 105 adapted to it. Oh, man.
Oh, yeah, no. It makes no sense. But, like... But they put so much marketing around, like, oh, yeah, you can adapt all your F-mount glass. I'm like, why? Why would I want to? Like, the point of mirrorless.
Until they come out with mirrorless versions of the same lenses. You're going to have to.
Okay, but then in that case, just stay with the DSLR. Until the system is a little bit more fleshed out, you know? Like, Canon came out with a bunch of great lenses to start.
I mean, that's the argument. Anytime, like, every company that's moved to mirrorless. Why adapt? The only reason you're adapting glass is because you don't have it yet.
Yeah, exactly.
So same thing happened with Sony, and we've seen that with Canon also.
Yeah, let's get into Fujifilm. I'm gonna take the Pro Photo thing off. Fujifilm, I think, has really stayed small. Like they're really about aesthetics of analog, classic styling, retro styling, and I think that they really still do stay very small and very ergonomically pleasing. This is just their X Pro 3, and this is like rangefinder style, whereas the XH1 is very DSLR style, and I put the grip on, and I think that, even with something that has the grip on, it's still pretty lightweight, and it's still pretty small. Like, it's very, very impressive to me. So I think Fujifilm overall, they've stuck to the mirrorless smaller is fine. Obviously what Paul has on him, it's much different with the...
I mean, I'd show you guys, but I'm live streaming for later.
No, the GFX 100, dude.
Oh, that? Yeah. Oof. Hang on. Let me throw my back out reaching for it.
Yeah. But, like, okay, so the XH1, like, it has a bigger grip than the...
It's the size of my head, and I have a big head.
Yeah, he really does.
Thanks, Chris.
Yeah, I figured.
Yeah, this is how massive it is. Just for comparison's sake, here's the Olympus M5 Mark 3. Like,
my gosh.
Or if I'm gonna do a Fuji to Fuji comparison, here's my Natura S.
That looks like the battery that goes inside the GFX 100.
It does.
It's a great way of
like,
putting it.
This thing is so heavy that it was too much for the ball head on my tripod to handle.
Yep.
Yeah, he did break it. I remember that.
I'm trying to shoot landscape, then all of a sudden this thing starts drooping. I'm like, no!
Yep.
Like,
Same thing happened to me when I was testing it.
Yeah, it just ruined the 5-minute long exposure. I'm like, oh, I was so mad.
Yep.
Yeah. But Fujifilm, Sony, I feel overall have really been keeping to that philosophy. Same with Micro Four Thirds. I mean, what do you guys feel? Like, you've tested the cameras too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I was sitting here playing with the EOS RA earlier on, and this thing is huge to me. It feels like my old DSLRs. It doesn't feel like a mirrorless camera to me. Yeah, it's a little bit thinner, but it's still really heavy. And maybe it's just because I'm so used to shooting with Micro Four Thirds now. But for me, the EOS R is still too big for a mirrorless camera. I personally, that's how I feel.
I in some ways agree with you. I think that the EOS R5 might be a little bit bigger, and I hope it really isn't. But I feel like that is a trade-off I'm willing to pay if I get super innovative glass like the 50-1.2 and the 85-1.2 and their 24-70 with image stabilization in there and the 28-70 f2. But that 28-70 f2 is large.
Well, I mean, I'm pretty confident that it will be larger than the EOS R.
It's going to have IBIS in it. So that's going to jump
so
up
it's
the
going to
size
be
a
a
bit.
little bit thicker of a body.
Yeah.
But, I'm okay with because it's not the thickest camera body. But, oh, man, that thing better get rid of that touch bar because, poof.
It did.
Yeah.
At least we've seen that in images.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think that this is 5D Mark II size though, or 5D Mark IV size, and like
it's like in between. It's kind of like
it's kind of like 6D size, right?
Yeah, it's kind of like halfway between like 5D series and like a Rebel. It's like midway. It's weird, So, but yeah, like the grip feels fine, and then you throw a giant f1.2 lens on it, and it feels front heavy.
Right.
So, that's just physics. There's no getting around physics.
Yeah, I mean that's probably why I have the strap that I do for it, like to keep it sort of loose, because I know that I'm not going to have it in my hand all day. Like I don't think that's a camera that I sit there and like I do street with necessarily, unless I have the 35-1.8, because that thing is fantastic.
Yep.
Yeah. It's small. It's image stabilized. The only thing is that it doesn't have weather sealing, and I wish that they put weather sealing in it. But I have a feeling that Canon is really just going to stick to weather sealed lenses being their L lenses, and that's it. But I hope that it changes.
I am looking forward to some smaller Canon RF lenses coming out for sure.
Yeah, totally. And now, the granddaddy of mirrorless, Leica. Leica has always been small and has always I took this thing out recently and I don't know, man, if I ever retire, I'm just going to go Leica. These things just feel great in my hand. Paul, you and I were talking about the Film Advance and this thing just feels perfect in my hand and my hand wraps around it so well. It's not hanging off. I could just go there like this and I can line up a shot. And I can say, okay, fine, I am ready, and I am going to shoot, and that's it. And it just feels so great.
It kind of goes back into what we were talking about last week or the week before about buying the camera that's right for you, because how a camera feels in the hand, it completely alters your experience of using the camera.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Paul got the M4, if I remember correctly?
Yep.
Yeah. Oh, your hand's hanging off too, right?
It's always hangs off.
Okay.
Always has.
Wait, bring the fingers up. Bring them up and then put the
well, I have the strap on here right now, so it's kind of impeding it a little bit. But...
Oh, so usually what I do in that case is and this is a trick for everyone. So let me fix the strap right now. So this is the strap normalized, right? So I do this. I bring it to the middle or like a little bit more closer to the wrist. 1, 2, 3. And I shoot like this. And now it basically acts like a wrist strap. And if I just want to drop it, I can.
Yeah, that's what I have. I have a wrist strap on there.
Yeah, but I prefer the versatility of like the actual full straps because I can turn them into wrist straps.
Oh, that sound.
I know, dude. But like Leicas just feel so perfect in my hand. Like it wraps around great. I was trained on Leicas. This Film Advance, you know, I know that they put it in the newer bodies, but oh, it feels so good. Brett, I don't think you've held a Leica, have you?
Me?
Yeah.
No.
I should probably send you my M6. Maybe I'll do that if I
Take it and run.
Yeah. Yeah, right. You know what? I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna say, here's your M6, and I'm gonna include a fake receipt so that Sam will see it, and it'll be like a $7,000 camera.
There you go. That's a bargain. See,
Yeah, that is a bargain.
I could explain that one away.
Yeah, right. Be like, don't worry, Sam. I'm gonna turn it around for 14 grand. I'll get the money tomorrow.
No, the body is $7,000, and then the not deluxe is 10.
Yep.
Let me hold my Fujifilm again, just the way
This
it
might trigger some people, but I actually have a Canon lens on my Leica.
I mean, some people will also be okay with that.
Yeah, but it's a 51 too. It's one of the best lenses they've ever made for Emma. So.
Yeah. My Fujifilm, you know, I don't need to do that whole thing. Like, I don't need to do this. I'm very comfortable doing it. Actually, no, wait, never mind. I lied. I do need to do this as well, too. But it still feels like a rangefinder. It still feels very great in my hand. It doesn't feel like a great, but
Speaking of Leica issues, I just lost another piece of the leatherette.
It's fine, man. Like, it just went up at like $3,000. It's patina.
That's true, yeah. Mine looks like it's pre-war conditions.
Yeah, there you go. It's probably older than my building that I live in, but yeah. But I mean, overall, when we sit there, we just looked at so many different camera systems. And like, I feel like in some ways, like some companies are still holding back to they're holding true to the ideals of mirrorless. But other companies like Sigma, in some ways with the art series, I don't really feel that they are. I don't really feel like Canon totally is. Panasonic just took it and just threw it out the window. Nikon, I mostly feel is, yeah, except when you get down to the APS-C bodies, at least in terms of the balance and all that stuff. And you know, I think that's also very important because let's say you own like a Z7 or a Z6, and you own the Zine 50 as like a backup camera body, they're not really going to be very ergonomically pleasing, I feel. Same with Panasonic and the L-mount Alliance. Sony, I feel, is mostly okay if you get like Tamron or Sony lenses or even Zeiss.
Well, if you really find that, you know, the full frame bodies are too large for your hands, their latest, you know, like Fred and I were just talking about this, their latest APS-C bodies are excellent, and they're even cheaper.
Yeah.
You know, so, and you know, you could absolutely shoot professional work using APS-C body.
Yeah, Fujifilm does it as well too.
Yeah.
So yeah, you're right.
So
Actually, you know, that's a great point because I'm not being fair to Canon then in that case. There's the M series, the EF-M series is very small, and they are very ergonomically pleasing. I like them. Dan has held them when he's been around here in New York, and he's really
right. I mean, yeah, we were shooting like race cars with it.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's certainly capable, but you know, you also have to look at like the lenses that you're pairing with it.
Yeah. I mean,
the only problem with the M series for me is there's no clear upgrade path up to RF mount.
Well, yeah, that's because unlike Nikon or Sony, it's a completely different mount. You know, whereas going back, at least EF and EFS, they shared a mount. You know, so you, even if you were using an EFS lens on a full frame EF body, you know, yeah, you'll get vignetting and stuff, but at least you have something you could use while you save up for a full frame lens.
and it's not even like they're gonna get rid of it because it's so popular in Japan and Asia.
Right, but it's the thing where a lot of people buy APS-C cameras as like a B cam or like a backup. That's if you're a Canon shooter, that unfortunately isn't an option for you.
Full frame all the way then. Only full frame.
Right, but
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Um so yeah, no, I feel like standardization. Like everyone should be like, this is mirrorless. We really should try to make it as small as possible. We shouldn't try to make it as large as Paul's head. Like it makes no sense.
Well, I mean, the funny thing is, the as all the technology is being improved upon. So going back to the Leica, right? When this camera was around, it was using the M mount, and it was shared by so many different companies. Like this is a Canon lens on my Leica, and I didn't
That
have
one's
to,
converted, wasn't it?
no, it's a
Okay.
native M mount lens. So like a lot of people, like back in the day, a lot of companies shared, they just shared, certain components. So like the M mount is the same mount used by, Leica,
Zeiss, Voigtlander.
Zeiss Voigtlander, and then obviously the Russian copies like Zorkis and stuff. And then Japan, they used it, like Canon used it, So maybe but obviously, like I don't foresee that ever happening ever again.
I don't think Canon use M. I thought they used
This
screw
is an
mounts.
M mount. Yeah, this is not converted, so I don't know. Maybe someone did the conversion. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I was about to say, like, Canon used screw mounts. Like, that lens has been known to be screw mount. And then
Oh,
the
okay.
Zorkis, I think, were screw mount as well, too.
Oh, you know what? I take that back. It looks like someone did modify this lens.
Yeah, that's what I thought. That's a
Yeah.
common thing people do.
Okay.
Yeah.
But anyway, like it looks like it was designed for my Leica.
Yeah.
So I mean, yeah, you could adapt. If you're a Sony shooter, you could adapt like EF lenses. You could adapt a bunch of other older glass to your Sony system, but that still doesn't take care of the size issue.
Mm. Yeah. Do you think that, when DSLRs are totally dead, sorry, Brett, that we need to go bigger with mirrorless? Or do you think we're at the good size? Like, what do you guys think? Like, what's going to make consumers continue to buy?
Well, I think maybe, just maybe, there may need to be like a paradigm shift. Like, there's no longer a reason why a mirrorless camera has to look like an SLR, because there's no prism up here. Like all these cameras, they have this form factor, but for what reason? These are all EVFs. There's no pentaprism up here. This is where the pentaprism used to go. So that's where you have a lot of these cameras that have like a rangefinder form factor that ends up being smaller and more compact. So that could be an answer. Maybe we just have to alter public perception of how a camera looks.
I'm so glad you said that because I want more rangefinder cameras so badly.
Well, I know you love rangefinders, but like, here's the first mirrorless camera that I bought that made me change the mirrorless was the A6000, and it's a rangefinder style, And honestly, I kind of prefer it because I got a sizable nose, and sometimes it ends up, pushing the touchscreen on a lot of the other cameras. It becomes an issue. So I got to wipe the screen down, or it's sometimes accidentally activating the touchscreen. So now, not only does it make it easier for me to shoot, the body is also more compact because now I don't have this big bump in the middle.
Paul, you're a right-eye shooter?
I can do both.
I was about to say, I always thought you were left.
I can do both, but like if I don't want to, like push my nose up against a LCD. I could do both.
Brett, what are you?
Right.
Okay. I used to shoot with my left, and then like my left eye is really terrible. So I have to shoot right these
But
days.
usually these days I'm a right eye shooter just because of, you know, especially on a DSLR body, I'm not shooting left because then my nose is up against my head.
Yeah, no, I get
Yeah.
that.
So, but yeah,
But Brett, what do you think about sizes? Like,
You know, I definitely hope they don't get bigger. For sure. And I think with, you know, just as technology advances and they can start miniaturizing stuff, hopefully the sizes will come down. But I mean, it just goes, just like we were talking about the other week, it just goes back to, just got to find what suits you, because there's not going to be one size that fits all. Everyone's different. So
yeah.
get what works for you.
Also, maybe there will be some sort of advancement in lens design that makes it so the lenses don't have to be as big. Because a lot of the lenses that we're using now, they're based on designs that are 50, 60, 70 years old, you know, or they're derived from lens designs that are that old.
oh, you know what? There is a patent for that with curved sensors. Yes.
Mhm.
Right. So, you know, it would require a fundamentally different way of thinking in terms of just designing cameras and lenses from the ground up. We've certainly seen a lot of that with phones, how they're kind of, you know, bending, like kind of, you know, traditional lenses, they're like this, they're perpendicular to the sensor. But now, because of how thin phones are, they're making them parallel, and then they're bending the light and kind of almost like the way periscopes work, you know. So yeah, it may be that it just requires a different way of thinking and designing, and the net result will be we're going to get smaller equipment, which, you know, I welcome it. You know, the smaller equipment tends to be lighter, and if I have to carry less, even better.
Yeah, no, totally. I mean, that's also one of the reasons why I still really like analog film cameras. Like, they're so
Right.
much smaller and they're built so
Mhm.
well.
Also, like I remember, like, uh, uh yes, a colleague of mine used to say that, oh, the reason why, you know, people can't take mirrorless cameras like seriously is because they look like toys, and, you know, they're not designed for professional use. And this person has now since bought a mirrorless camera. So it's just like, you know, like some people, obviously, you know, a lot of us, if we're used to something and we're comfortable with it, that tends to be what we stick with. But yeah, just try new things, because you don't know until you experience the benefits that new technologies afford you. You can't just blanketly say that, oh, this isn't good enough for professional use. Like, have you tried it? Until you try it, you won't know. You know. So yeah, just keep an open mind.
Yeah. That's all we have time for, though, folks. Thank you so much for tuning in and being part of our conversation. And Paul, Brett, thank you guys as always. And we will catch you here next Sunday. So take care, folks. And if you're in the audience, stick around. We'll open the conversation up to everyone in just a sec.
Thank you,
Later.
everyone.
Good night, everyone.
Cut.